Hello and welcome to The Real Bottom Line, the podcast for entrepreneurs featuring entrepreneurs. My guest today is the fabulous Carrie Forbes. She is the CEO and founder of Rockstar Advisory. So, of course, we had to have her on. Welcome, Carrie, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Wendy.
Okay, so how long have you been an entrepreneur?
Well, I would say since I was a child, I was always doing crazy money-making ventures.
Oh,
Um, I created a art gallery in my bedroom and charged adults admission. We sold, all sorts of things like lemonade and popcorn, all that stuff. So I've had the bug. And then throughout my career, I had various side gigs along the way, little pieces here and there out of interest mainly. But after a significant career achievement, finishing major transformation, and then my own personal transformation, I felt it was time.
mm.
And so it's been about not quite a year for Rockstar purely.
Yeah.
And so far, I'm having all the fun.
What is the biggest shift that you had to make mentally to go from senior executive running the show, but having tons of people underneath you versus on your own smaller team?
This is a great one because I think at first, what I was anticipating was more of the delegation, right? What
Mhm.
do you do? That part for me was a little easier. And there's a lot now with AI support and some things that can help us and tools. I'm also good at collaborating. But what I didn't anticipate was being completely on my own with no board, no structure that you would have in a, say, mature organization where you still have this audience to answer to. And you know, it's freeing, but it's very real.
Mm.
Where now these are decisions you're going to truly impact and maybe start to question, am I doing the right thing? I don't have past history to go back to. And a lot of people will question you in a different way,
Ooh.
maybe. And that was something um, I guess I didn't really think about, like, not so much why are you doing this, but, "Oh boy, you're brave." And I'm thinking, well, a lot of the other things I did fit that category, but do you know something I don't? So that kind of questioning, I think, has been
Is there something
more
around the
interesting.
corner that I don't know is coming? Is there a bear?
Yeah, and I think too, and I think many of us who are entrepreneurial, have well-meaning people in our lives that might give us messages about risk.
Mm.
Gosh, my parents were like, get a good job with a pension, and security is
Yeah.
always top of mind. But when you're in that mindset, you tend to look at things from that being the baseline. And so sometimes when you changed your baseline, it's confusing to people. Why did you give up this to take this risk? And those are the things that are exciting about being able to see possibilities.
Mm.
And I think what I'm learning about myself is that's a skill. And maybe you don't get to flex it as much until you're truly on your own. And those people aren't going to get it necessarily.
It's interesting. You and I had a chat a few weeks ago, and you explained some of the things that you did, and that was brave. But was maybe it's almost like the entrepreneurial journey is so visible as brave versus the work you do inside a corporation. It's a smaller subset of people that view that and understand the bravery.
I think you're right. And I'm also the type of leader and have been where I don't want to own all the credit.
Yeah.
Often I'm putting the people who are doing the work around and highlighting what they've done. So that also can be very tricky because if people don't understand your contribution to that, they may not make that connection in that way. But whether you're in the organization and in CEO roles, especially, they're so varied. People have an impression that you're sitting in a jet somewhere just
The
making phone calls.
throne is golden.
Yeah,
They're bringing you grapes.
you know, in our nonprofit office where, I didn't even have an executive assistant.
Oh, wow. Yep.
So, but I think, yeah, when you are on your own, you are everything. And so it's easier as well for people to comment to that
Mm,
too, because they can be very, uh, I don't want to use the word brave again, but I think, not as mindful about who they're talking to and perhaps some of the things they would say if they think about a company that's established
yeah.
or a brand or that. Um, anyway, it's one of those things though that throughout my life I'm used to being underestimated. So
Yeah.
it's become one of those things. And a colleague of mine was saying the same thing. That's not a bad place to be because people won't expect too much. So when you do things, you can just keep going.
Question about that, because here you were used to giving out a lot of credit, maybe even diminishing your role somewhat to give other people the spotlight. And now you've started a company where you need to shine the spotlight on yourself. Because otherwise, because no one else is going to really,
Yeah.
and no one else cares whether you get a gig or not. So, how has that shifted in your mind to go, you really do have to self promote more? Like, how has that shift happened and what are you doing?
This has been one of the more challenging parts for me.
Mm,
Um, on one hand, I have some skill sets in presentation and theater and communication, which when I was doing that for someone else or a different purpose, I didn't think about it the same way. I just go out and speak and do. But the minute that I started honing in on my own self as a brand, boy, I got self conscious. And,
yeah.
we struggle. And I'm a middle aged woman now. And so all this programming from the past and from the present on visibility, instead of giving me attention, um, start to weigh in. And I will say that I probably avoided putting my direct face on things when I
Mm,
first got started.
yeah.
And after a while, and I think some of it's the undoing and rethinking about yourself. It's
Yeah.
it's growth, but to put myself truly out there and be me. So not corporate value adhering to this company, but my own set. That feels raw. Uh,
It feels wrong.
raw. Sorry, like
Raw.
almost like you're undressing, right?
Right. You are. You're
Yeah,
showing parts that maybe you were actually rewarded to not show before.
absolutely. Things like, I mean, I have tattoos, and I probably wouldn't have been as visible with them in
Mm,
previous role. In fact, even 15 years ago, something like that would be, you can't share that. You need to make sure you don't
yeah.
make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And yet now, that's the very thing, especially with younger generations, where it's almost a sign of, okay, you comfortable with yourself. And so
Ooh.
maybe what you're seeing comes from a real place and not just some script you've made up.
Yeah. What are the things that you learned from, I'm going to call it corporate, that you are leaving behind forever, and what are the ones that you then try and teach some of your clients, like, because
Yeah.
there's good and bad in everything,
Right.
right? So
And
how do you decide what to share?
I love this question because we beat up on corporate a lot, but guess what?
It's
Corporate has,
successful, it works.
it works, and we learn many good things. The best training that I got and some of the best leadership was in a large bank, and it happened to be a team. So the
Right.
leader often makes the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the right leadership in a corporate environment can make it work. Same with, you can have a great, flexible, friendly environment, and it can be absolute chaos.
Right.
And so I've seen all of these types of environments. And so I think what I would leave behind corporate are the things that are outdated now, right? We had systems to direct people in a labor world, right? Thought about your physical, what you did, but now we're thinking about people's minds. And so the way that we guide people or allow them to create, that space is tricky in the traditional top down. Here's your 9 to 5, here's your meeting schedule, create in this half hour. Like, it's
Yeah.
very difficult. We also, and in today, really struggle still with inclusion. Um, and the bigger the environment, the harder that gets.
Hmm.
We strive when we're small to be all these things, and the bigger we get, the harder that is. So I think those are some of the things that make corporate very difficult. And then all the I would say outcomes that people really focus on start to happen. Now,
Ah.
on the upside, I think corporations do some things really well. If you're inclusive, you're going to have many different people with different ideas and different work styles. How do you manage that? You need to have structure and governance of doing. That doesn't mean locking people into, I think, really rigid ways of working. But the way I looked at it is this: a really effective team is like a relay race. And that's what a good corporation does. It knows whose role does what, how
And
it
when to
fits,
pass the baton.
when to pass the baton, and when to do it well. So
Yeah.
corporations that invest in the training to what we call soft skills, it's really how to communicate better, how to pass the baton better,
Hmm.
get it down. And that's the stuff that I like to bring to smaller organizations, which is great because they can do this easier. Usually they're smaller. They just need to be able to access that learning. And sometimes it's out of reach given the costs. That's where
Yeah.
I can put something together.
Well, here's what I'm taking from that. Correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like when you come from an organization like that, there is typically a great deal of formality, a great deal of process that's documented, etc. And
Yeah,
then we get into our entrepreneurs and we got none of that. However, there comes a point in growth
yeah,
that becomes more and more and more important,
right.
and understanding that piece so that you can do it. The best chart I've ever seen was put up, I saw it by Miranda Lever. So she was one of the starters of Thinkific. And
Mm-hmm.
she had this chart, XY axis, and the line went like this. And on the top part, when you first start up, you need a lot of startup energy, right?
Yes,
And then you need to shift into running it energy. And the running
right.
it energy is where I think the background in corporate becomes invaluable to
Yeah.
helping to know when to put what structure in and why.
And it's a different skill set.
Hmm.
So a lot of times, and I see this so much, particularly in the fintech startup world, you've got really smart technologists. If they've been lucky to work a bit in the financial sector, they'll have a little more knowledge of how things work. But typically, we see great idea, run energy, get a couple funding rounds. Now, I need to grow to meet the demand. Here's where it gets interesting because everything that we just burned on isn't going to get us to this next stage.
No, right.
It's now people because I have to grow, whether that's partners, it's we're getting into the internal. How do we deliver, not just sell? And so delivery is so
Hmm.
different for folks. If you don't have experience in it,
Yeah.
then there's a many mistakes you can make. Often start hiring people, buddies, people I know and trust. They
Yep.
can do it. And then we start building tribes and it starts to
Hmm.
roll because we didn't think through how the organization would need certain jobs, what roles they would require, whether the
Yeah.
right people. And it always becomes the last thing on the list.
When
We'll
it
get to
really
that
should be
later.
almost the first.
It should, it really should.
And what you're bringing to my mind too is I think a lot sometimes about corporate culture or the culture of the organization, and how if you're not intentional and deliberate about what you want and how you're going to build that, you're going to have a structure. And if it's all your buddies, it could start to feel a little frat house versus I want to be like this, right?
And that will become your reputation. So
Mm,
long term, I've seen this in the market. You may get through 18 to 2 years of a contract, but inevitably something's going to go wrong, or a client is going to want something different. And then you have built no resilience. You
mm,
built for the acquisition. You might be focused on fundraising,
yeah,
but we're not thinking about that long term. So if you plan that ahead,
yeah.
have that right partner who will be that operations expert, keeping that thought instead of just jumping on the dopamine, that can help mitigate tons of risk at the gate. Um, I was thinking too that remote work really saw this. And I do a lot of leading remote teams. And how did we make that flip? And I still believe this. You said the word, it's deliberate planning. When people just said, we'll get online and meet, it didn't work because it's not the same. We
No.
have to lead it different. And it's the same in this phase. You have to lead, be a different leader at different phases. And if you're not the right leader, then you have to make a big decision about how you're
Yes.
going to move it forward.
Yeah, yeah. I think especially when you play a lot in the fintech space, so that's startup, a lot of startup energy, and it's understanding where your love as a founder is. Your love might be the code, and
Yes.
never wanting to deal with a person. And you know what? That is okay, but you have to make the adjustments and bring in the team that can do it.
Yeah. I like to use a metaphor, uh, Rockstar related or really
Yeah,
music.
let's do some Rockstar because I want to know where that name came from, of course.
So, in truth, my son is in three local bands. He is an amazing musician, plays all instruments, primarily a drummer. But it's really in that thought about what I see in these musicians. It's continual practice.
Hmm.
Like there is no, we're not just walking out there and winging it. And it's about collaboration. And so, if you're a band, and imagine you're all coming together, and now you need a lead, and especially think about a symphony. You're a conductor. Your job is to make sure all everybody else is in rhythm. The minute you start playing your favorite instrument, everything's gonna go off key. The rhythm gets lost.
Yeah.
And so that's what I like to share is that workplaces are they're built around rhythms. When people are out of that rhythm, it's because they don't have enough education or awareness, wrong role, don't understand.
Yeah.
That's the leader's job. So sometimes I've seen folks in this role going, I really don't like doing it. I'm like, well, what's everybody else? How are they going to function if you can't play the conductor role?
Hmm.
Somebody has to do that.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of self awareness because CEO sounds so good, but the result of it could be detrimental.
Yeah. I love that. You also make me think of a concept I learned at Strategic Coach, which I find super cool, which is front stage, backstage.
Yes.
And how when we're meeting with clients or doing networking or doing a presentation, we're performing.
Yes.
Whereas we have this whole organization in behind us, the roadies, I guess,
Mhm.
that are handing us the guitar and they're making sure the mic
Yeah,
works and, helping deliver that performance is your backstage. And
exactly.
that is equally important, if not more important than the front stage.
100%. And you can actually see this. It's funny. I'm not actually a big fan of her music, but Taylor Swift,
Oh,
look at the example she has done in the industry.
yeah.
She uplifts everybody around her crew.
Mm-hmm.
She pays them fairly. She leads her organization,
Yeah.
not just her brand. And in return, look at her success. And I don't think that's an accident.
I think that I don't know if it's appreciated as much as it should be, but when you think about, I think about her and I put Beyonce in there and I put a lot of those performers in there because in my head, it's almost like, when you go to a club and the band rolls on stage and everything seems like it's totally like in the moment versus
Yeah.
these scripted, choreographed, and practice, practice, practice to get perfect events.
Yeah.
It's a I you know what? It's almost like you have to start with one and then you move into the other.
Exactly. And some people are very good at the upfront. Some people are much better internally and struggle. My former boss, that was an excellent mentor. We were kind of complementary that way. He was much more comfortable backstage
Hmm.
and did a wonderful job. And I learned a lot about my own style from things that he did. He was not as comfortable front stage.
Yeah.
And that's where I was able to support and help him say, well, as CEO, you're the cheerleader. So here's where you need to be. And he actually got very comfortable with it once he understood the boundaries of it as well.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, that's also important. It's can be overwhelming being in that front stage if you don't have a good understanding of how to protect that space. Um, and you know that was something I had to learn because I'm very open in that, and you can get just completely overwhelmed if
Hmm.
you don't have good sense of boundaries around your space.
I'd like to shift gears just a little bit, um, into the fintech area. Um, what I love about you, Carrie, is that here you are, the age you are, the gender you are, and here you are big into tech, right? It's kind of an anomaly where people who think like that are, women who think like that are a little bit in short supply. And I think we're all painted with the brush that, oh my God, we hate tech and it's so overwhelming and don't make me do anything new. Whereas I think that's counterintuitive. There are so many of us that really embrace tech,
Yeah.
love what it's doing for us and everything like that. Talk to me because you just launched something new. I'd like to hear about it and how that is impacting the world of finance.
Oh, thank you. So I've been in, I'd say, accidental technologist most of my life.
Yep.
I've been interested in it. Even as a little kid, my first computer was like playing with a Commodore 64.
I had that too.
Yes, there we go. Um, but as I went to the work world, I had a lot of curiosity.
Mm.
So I just jumped in whenever the opportunities presented themselves. I took a bit of computer science
Oh,
and I
wow.
could understand while I was in school, oh, yeah, this is going to be where the direction goes. And I think what's interesting is we have less women enrolled in technology now than we did in the mid 90s,
We have
which
less
is
what?
women
Oh,
enrolled in computer science in a lot of in STEM, especially around more of the, I'd say the coding sciences that we
okay.
did before. And I think it comes to again what we see or our perception of sort of like the hooded, tech bro kind of doing their thing
Yeah.
or gamer culture. But women have been doing incredible pragmatic work. And most people don't realize that computer programming was the domain of women originally. They were typists. So they said, you do this. And many of the early coding languages were developed by women. So I got rolling along. And for me, especially in my young years and in those times of the 90s, it was just need a job, right? I'll
Yeah.
do whatever I need to do. But I learned this new world that had just opened up on online banking. And we had to learn networking and
Right.
bits of code to be able to service this. And through the years, um, that aptitude applied for e-learning, some other types of work. I just jumped in and learned. And I did some enterprise architecture a little bit later on, helping to solve for the business problems. So that's what I guess differentiates my experience and a lot of women
Hmm.
is that we often come into it because we're solving some other problems and tech becomes a tool and then an interest and then it becomes something
Yeah.
where I see a lot of startups go, I know how to build things. I would need to find a way to apply what I've learned into a product. So I do find that path for women is very different. And fintech in general, we I've seen not just lots of women in the fintech space, but artists and creators,
Yeah.
neurodivergent people. And I think it's because it's not quite finance, it's not quite technology, and there's a lot of room for creativity right now. So
Well, I
you
think
tend to see that.
creativity like that um, gives you that extra advantage to solving the problem because, you know, the problem is there. Usually it's been there a long time. So
Yes,
it's not being solved by creative, like by logical thinking. So you need to think a little differently to get there.
exactly. And we think about finance and tech, it sounds very logical, right? Guess what? People who use money products are not really logical a lot of times. We are so passionate about our money, and it is an emotional issue.
Hmm.
So that also brings elements, as we know, like criminality, and you got to watch for all of the nefarious things that come with a money system. So it's a place where I believe the exception of maybe defense, anything that's going to get created in technology will likely get created in the finance world first because the stakes are so high and people want to prove it out and make all kinds of money.
I took a fintech course from Wharton a few years ago
Mhm.
just because I wanted to learn some new language, in particular, a little bit around the whole cryptocurrency, which is its whole separate language. But what I appreciated was the talking about regulation, talking about having a sandbox to test things in, and how the technology is really ahead of regulation. Like we're seeing that a
Yeah.
lot right now. How do you handle that when you're talking to your fintech clients?
And yeah, I think what's great about this question, because I didn't quite answer your last one, which is what we're doing, this sort of fits in with it.
Okay, good.
So technology is advancing so rapidly to the point where we can do things with it faster than our own brain can process. So, one of the things that's also happening is we're seeing a wealth rise, and that certain groups are getting the advantage of these new technologies. But these problems are still there. So, we're not necessarily, I'd say, bringing the right folks together to say who wants to build for those that don't have, or to bridge these gaps, or to find these different markets that aren't getting the attention, and how do we have this conversation? So that's a lot of what we're trying to accomplish with Finclusive Edge, which is a Halifax community around this discussion of how do we build fintech for everybody in this way. So
So the
I,
democratization of fintech.
yeah, very much so.
Love it.
And I have a lot of experience with cooperatives,
Hmm.
and I think that's one response. But tech itself is becoming a barrier. So if you're a smaller institution, maybe a lender, an insurance, any of these, I'll say not large, banks
Massive
or
entities.
massive, the cost just to participate is getting harder and
Hmm.
harder to manage. So, tech, I think we're at an inflection point, especially now with AI tools, where the ability to create products and services, make them very specific and to our own niche is there. We just got to get the right thinking, the right builders, and the right investors around that question. And I
Ah,
think it gets what we call very sticky because things that solve real problems tend to stay and then get built
okay. Um, so I'm glad you've got this organization going because I feel like that will have spark conversation, spark community, and really when it comes down to some of these things, it's around a mindset and an ethos or a morality piece to keep in mind and keeping that top of mind
on.
because money just for money isn't always the best answer.
Yeah.
I want to go into AI a little bit because,
Mm,
you know, I look at that as a transformational thing that's happening. How do you approach that with your companies that you're speaking with? Like what is the process that you would lead someone through to
yeah.
understand, hey, you need, this is where your problem is. This, you know what I mean? Help me with that.
So this is a big part of where I'm doing some focus today, and I'm going to call it like pre-implementation discussions. People are so ready to go buy a tool or a thing or a subscription. I've got a chat GPT or I have a closed instance, but now what do I do with it? It's the question,
Yeah.
right? And the danger of specifically with AI is we really don't know yet all of the capabilities,
Mm.
but I can share we're failing projects at a high rate. I just read 73% of AI projects in the last 18 months went nowhere.
Interesting.
And I think it's because people aren't stepping back to 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 me it's this old adage I say, we have a solution looking for a problem.
Ah,
And
yes.
so great, we have AI tools, but what people do is they start inventing shiny widgets or things they think will attract young folks or whatever that looks like.
Yep.
But they really have specific problems that this could be in a small, low risk way, a way to get your. And a lot of organizations haven't thought through risk. Do you have the capability to protect data that you're generating? Do you understand what data you should have or not have?
Mm.
And do your people have the right understanding? So if they're using this, they're not sharing proprietary company
Yeah.
information. There's a lot of those, I would say, assessment checks. Um, and so what I do is, let's get real and let's not focus on all the things you're not doing because that feels like I'm tired. Let's focus on your strengths and the things that are advancing you today, and then think about how AI would enhance that
Right.
or deal with a risk that you really have and pick one or two small things that to
Yep.
start with. Then we can start looking at questions like, in order to do this, do you have the right people? Who would they be? Do you have policies of how you're going to handle this?
Yeah.
And do you have a measurement system to know whether you're successful? And does it end? Because sometimes these things they start and they never end, and then we're spending money without results. So those are just some of the I'll say the assessment and discussion. We kind of put together a small plan and figure out, is this the right time, number one? Because it might not be. And I
Yeah.
think that's so important. Be ready and then go fully in. You don't want to take it on and then only be able to dedicate partial time, especially when you've got expectations that you might have raised. And then you can go from there and then start to create a real project plan, but based on your capabilities instead of adopting a basic framework and trying to make it fit.
Yeah.
So, getting people ready for it and understanding what readiness looks like, I think is the part that I'm spending a lot of time in. And it's worth it. That's how we
Mm.
get that 27% success.
I really like this. I feel like there's a lot of pressure at some level through social, through everything else. Just that, oh man, you're not using AI, you're getting left behind. Versus, hey, AI is awesome, but let's look at exactly how we're going to get ready for it. What does success look like, and what's the best way to do it?
Agreed. And I think the other piece that I'm reading about is just how attached people are getting to agents and their chatbots.
Yeah.
So the number one use case now, it was search, now it's therapy. Imagine people are putting their vulnerable selves to this chatbot. So I think that we have really ramped up, I'll call the FOMO. We
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of people jumping in personally, and then we have to understand that's their experience. So if they're bringing that into the workplace, now you also have perhaps a mismatch in how you want people to use these tools, a different risk profile,
Yeah.
and maybe you're going to see or end up with data you don't want. So lots of questions. And I think it's like when the internet started and we were all going to stop buying books, publishing was going to end, we
Right.
needed a web page. And I don't think, we're going to see much different from AI. The
Yeah.
hype is going to start to come down.
That's awesome. So, Carrie, our time is coming to a close. This has been a fascinating conversation. If you had kind of a nugget you'd like to leave our listeners with around what you do, how you do it, and things they need to be thinking about, what would that be?
Well, I love this question. I put something out recently around this, and I'll leave this. In this world where we've got technology, we may have some distrust, right? You
Mm.
got to remember AI, A starts for artificial. The real intelligence is yours.
Mm.
And so, despite everything around us, I truly believe that greatness comes from the human skills that we bring out through these tools. So, to my mind, it's time just to not worry about getting on the train,
Yeah.
but starting to think about as well, what is it that I do that's great that you can't replicate? Because that's really, no matter what shifts we have and what changes, and no matter what you adopt in technology, we're moving to a place where the human skills are the value. And to me, that's kind of exciting. So I leave people with some optimism, I hope, deliberate optimism, which is, the hype will come down. Like anything, we'll find the right value for that tool, but you lead it. It doesn't have to lead you.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. I think about my industry in financial planning, and I feel like it's the difference between IQ and EQ, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that you can train EQ as much. Well, thank you so much, Carrie, for your time today. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can reach out to me at www.rockstaradvise.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn
Yeah,
and on Instagram. So feel free to reach out anytime.
that's awesome. Thanks so much, Carrie. I really think the bottom line here today is technology, AI, everything. It's a tool, and it's
Yes,
having a process around what tools you need and everything that's going to be a game changer for your business.
absolutely.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you for having me.